Welcome back to the second hour of our study. We're picking up with our study on Christian marriage. We're taking as our basic launch point the book Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs. And we'll be picking up with chapter 1, Sarah Can't Stop Peppering the Eggs, when we resume with the audio portion. Before we do that, I thought I would give you some common expressions that men and women say that are offensive to the other. Here are some examples of ways a man might mistakenly invalidate feelings and perceptions or offer unwanted solutions. See if you can recognize why she would resist. You shouldn't worry so much. But that is not what I said. It's not such a big deal. Okay, I'm sorry. Now we can just forget it. Why don't you just do it? But we do talk. You shouldn't feel hurt. That's not what I meant. So what are you trying to say? But you shouldn't feel that way. How can you say that? Last week I spent the whole day with you. We had a great time. Okay then, just forget it. All right, I'll clean up the backyard. Does that make you happy? I got it. This is what you should do. Look, there's nothing we can do about it. If you are going to complain about doing it, then just don't do it. Why do you let people treat you that way? Forget them. If you're not happy, then we should just get a divorce. All right, then you can do it from now on. All right, then you can do it from now on. From now on, I'll handle it. Of course I care about you. That's ridiculous. Would you get to the point? All we have to do is, that's not at all what happened. Okay? Each of these statements either invalidates or attempts to explain upset feelings or offers a solution designed suddenly to change her negative feelings to positive feelings. The first step a man can take to change this pattern is simply to stop making the above comments. To practice listening without offering any invalidating comments or solutions is, however, a big step. You see, men, because they are providers and protectors, always want to go straight to the solution. Okay? Bottom line, that's right. Bottom line. You know why? You know why men want to get to the bottom line? Because it's the right thing to do, right? Okay? Women, on the other hand, want to discuss it. Okay? They want to be taken through the whole process, right? Because they are the ones who raise the children and they nurture and so on. So they want to get that input and that communication going. Men, woman says, we've got a real problem. Will you look at this? Sure, I'll take care of it. And the woman says, where'd he go? Where'd he go? I wanted to talk about it. And the man said, yeah, okay, I got it. It's okay. We'll take care of this. That's the difference between the man and the woman. So that's why the man will say these kind of things. And
do you know why the woman wants to do that?
We're not talking about that right now. I've got stuff to teach here. We have no time for that stuff. For idle chatter. Okay?
I would love to hear.
Well, you two can discuss it over lunch. Why don't you two have a lunch date and talk about it?
Robin and I both said we just want to discuss the bottom line. Like, we're okay with the bottom line.
Okay. When a man resists a woman's suggestions, she feels as though he doesn't care. She feels her needs are not being respected. As a result, she understandably feels unsupported and stops trusting him. That brings up a point at halftime. Jonah and I were talking. Men want also to feel loved, and women also want to feel respected. This love and respect, love for the woman, respect for the man, are the primary needs, and that varies from in degrees in different men and women, but the woman wants to be respected as well. At such times, by remembering that men are from Mars, she can instead correctly understand why he is resisting her. She can reflect and discover how she was probably giving him unsolicited advice or criticism rather than simply sharing her needs, providing information, or making a request. Here are some brief examples of ways a woman might unknowingly annoy a man by offering advice or seemingly harmless criticism. As you explore this list, remember that these little things can add up to create big walls of resistance and resentment. In some of the statements, the advice or criticism is hidden. See if you can recognize why he might feel controlled. Okay, for a man, any criticism is
wrong. And I say, just get over it.
is hurtful. Okay, all right. Back to the women again here. How can you think of buying that? You already have one. That was in the book. I didn't make that. That wasn't my personal experience.
I never say that.
No.
Can't get me on that one.
I'm the one that says that.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Why are you buying another gun? You've already got 14.
This is the women right here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is.
Oh, this is the women.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This one wasn't it.
No, that's why.
This one wasn't in the book. I wrote it in myself. Okay. Yeah, it was in the book. It was in the book. Okay. Those dishes are still wet. They'll dry with spots. Your hair is getting kind of long, isn't it? There's a parking spot over there. Turn the car around. You want to spend time with your friends? What about me? You shouldn't work so hard. Take a day off. Don't put that there. It'll get lost. You should call a plumber. He'll know what to do. Why are we waiting for a table? Didn't you make reservations? You should spend more time with the kids. They miss you. Your office is still a mess. I didn't write this one in either. Your office is still a mess. How can you think in here? When are you going to clean it up? You forgot to. Yeah. I think you read the book and you took this as the things you're supposed to say. Yeah. You forgot to bring it home again. Maybe you could put it in a special place where you can remember it. You're driving too fast. Slow down or you'll get a ticket. Next time, we should read the movie reviews. I didn't know where you were. You should have called. Somebody drank from the juice bottle. Don't eat with your fingers. You're setting a bad example. Those potato chips are too greasy. They're not good for your heart. You are not leaving yourself enough time. You should give me more advance notice. I can't just drop everything and go to lunch with you. Your shirt doesn't match your pants. Bill called for the third time. When are you going to call him back? Your toolbox is such a mess. I can't find anything. You should organize it. Have you called to transfer the money out of that account yet?
Things that have been said in the last 2 weeks. And I'm not even married.
All right. When a woman does not know how to directly ask a man for support, chapter 12, it's way in the future, or constructively share a difference of opinion, chapter 9, she may feel powerless to get what she needs without giving unsolicited advice or criticism. To practice giving acceptance and not giving advice and criticism is, however, a big step. By clearly understanding he is rejecting not her needs but the way she is approaching him, she can take his rejection less personally and explore more supportive ways of communicating her needs. Gradually, she will realize that a man wants to make improvements when he feels he is being approached as the solution to a problem rather than as the problem itself. Okay. So let's see if we can get back on track here. And you guys can confess sins at any time you want. Okay? You don't even have to bow your head and close your eyes so that I won't know that that's what you're doing. You can just silently stare off into space and confess your sins, okay? Now, you can't confess other people's sins, okay? Well, unless you're a woman, and then you can confess your husband's sins, okay?
Sarah can't stop peppering the eggs. Sarah likes pepper on her eggs. I do not. In her view, scrambled or sunny side up eggs need to be peppered until black. In the course of our marriage, Sarah has fixed me eggs hundreds of times, and she has put pepper on these eggs just about every time she cooks them, even though she knows I don't like peppered eggs. But I've concluded that Sarah is not doing this to spite me or because I'm unimportant to her. I know her heart. She has even muttered in frustration after peppering the eggs again, "Well, they aren't any good if they don't have pepper." As baffled as I am by this constant peppering, I have not concluded that Sarah's plotting to change me or irritate me. I know Sarah's thinking of other things. She's on autopilot when she peppers my eggs. I've told her hundreds of times, "Please don't put pepper on my eggs." If she really respected me, wouldn't she listen to me? Wouldn't it be natural for me to explode
He didn't always say it in that voice.
in anger, especially if I can predict this again? Wouldn't it be right for me to become doubtful of her good intentions? Wouldn't it be right for me to start keeping track of many annoying things she does, like peppering my eggs? All this would prove I really don't matter to her, wouldn't it? But I'm able to interpret.
Remember that part way down there in the love description, love does not keep an account of wrongs? We do it anyway.
Sarah much less negatively than that because I've decided that she does not intend to be disrespectful, not in her deepest soul. Emerson can't put things where they belong. I leave wet towels where they don't belong. I leave a loaf of bread on the counter. I leave the cupboard doors open. I leave books stacked on the living room floor. I have an excuse, of course. I'm mentally preoccupied. As Sarah says, he's always thinking. Sometimes I stun myself by what I do or don't do. Looking back at the cupboard doors, I realize most of them are still open. I say to myself, why didn't I close those doors? Where was my mind? Or I leave towels lying on the bedroom floor instead of hanging them up in the bathroom. By the way, this is where we've learned to keep things light, which releases tension. When Sarah dangles the towel in front of my face, I smile and say, "What a coincidence. I was just going to hang that towel up." Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a pig, but I'm married to Sarah, who is the epitome of neatness and cleanliness, and I flunk by her standards. She is not a perfectionist, but she's logical. Why leave a towel on the bed when a rack is in the bathroom waiting for the towel? And why leave a cupboard door open when the hinge functions both ways? Why leave the books on the floor when it would only take a few seconds to put them on the bookshelf? But Sarah has not concluded that this means I'm.
I think we need to stop here.
Emerson here,
Sarah!
Emerson can't put her towels where they're supposed to be.
Sarah really is logical. Oh my.
That's your problem.
Oh my.
You all are transvestites.
We are having good identity problems right here.
And I passed it on to her.
So you got,
Him.
yeah, you got to marry a transvestite too.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, maybe we better not stop and talk about this. Everybody under control now?
I'm out to ignore her or irritate her. She knows I'm thinking of other things, that I'm on autopilot as I come and go. Yet she has told me thousands of times, please pick things up and put them away, okay? Wouldn't it be easy for her to say, if you really loved me, you would listen to me? Wouldn't it be natural for her to explode in anger? Wouldn't it be right for her to become doubtful of my good intentions? Wouldn't it be right for her to start keeping track of the many things I do like this? After all, surely all this would prove she really doesn't matter to me. But Sarah is able to see me in a more positive light because she has decided to believe that I do not purpose to be unresponsive and unloving, not in my deepest soul. Yes, Sarah and I both have our faults.
That is the key to the understanding of relationships, developing the relationship, is to make that decision the man or sort of man to say and to understand that his wife doesn't disrespect him, and therefore interpret what she is saying from what he knows about her as a loving individual. The wife, on the other hand, has to determine that she is going to approach their conversations, their interactions, with the belief that he loves her and that he is not trying to be unloving toward her, but is reacting out of the way he is designed to respond in life. So you have to make those decisions. A comedian one time, I heard him say, they said, well, he said, you're married? And he said, no, I'm not married anymore. And he said, you're not? And he said, no. He said, it was a rude awakening to me to realize I couldn't get along with somebody who loved me. And you know, he was being funny, but it was a truth. You know, he couldn't get along with somebody that loved him. There's something wrong with him. We have to make that determination that the person isn't, and that determination will slip from your mind readily. It will slip from your mind immediately upon the other sex opening their mouth. That thought that you have purposed and you have repeated over and over in your head. I am going to enter this conversation with the understanding that she is not disrespecting me. I'm entering this conversation with the understanding that he loves me. Right? As we have that thought and we purpose to go that way, you will find that it will leave your head immediately. Okay? So you have to just make it a habit. You just have to keep practicing it. Are we getting any audio? Okay. Just keep practicing that thought. That's the basis of the way I'm going to approach this.
But also part of that, as we have learned about our filters, is that they could and should be able to do whatever, and it's how we also then process it, which goes in conjunction with not thinking that they are on purpose doing something. But then if you can also recognize really kind of what filter you keep taking that through, they could do the exact same action, and it would be fine to someone else.
Yeah, men talking to each other or women talking to each other have not these problems. They understand each other, and so, but it's the man and woman interaction, and that can happen all the way from child parent all the way up to business relationships, politics, any area. Men and women think differently and need to understand that in their relationships. And so we have to watch our filters, not just our other filters, but our male and female filters for those who have them in the right order.
The crazy cycle always wants to spin, but we can control it by remembering the love and respect connection. We know this works, and there's much I want to share about how and why it works. The first step is understanding just how husbands and wives communicate. To communicate, decipher the code. If husbands and wives are to understand the love and respect connection, they must realize that they communicate in code. And the problem is, they don't know how to decipher the messages they send to one another. A couple was about to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary, and the wife began to wonder if her husband would remember. There had been plenty of times during the past decade when he'd forgotten their anniversary altogether. No matter what she did, little hints, bigger hints, he would miss it. But on their 10th wedding anniversary, with no hints at all, he remembers. He makes a beeline for Hallmark and is soon gazing upon all those racks full of greeting cards. One colorful card quickly catches his eye. He skims the words. They're perfect. He thinks, this card is her, no doubt about it. He grabs it off the shelf, pays the clerk, and hurries home rejoicing. Finally, he has remembered their anniversary, and a special one it will be, too. She is there when he arrives at home, so he sneaks the card into another room, signs it, and quickly writes her name on the envelope. He even adds a couple tiny hearts over her name as an extra touch. Then he comes out and hands his wife her 10th anniversary card. She beams from ear to ear. She is so happy. Finally, he has remembered. She tears open the card and begins to read, and then her face falls. The eyes that had been bright with loving energy turn cold. Her beaming countenance becomes sour and dark. "What's wrong?" her husband asks. He's a very sensitive guy, and he can pick up on these things. "Nothing." "There is too. What's wrong?" "No, there's not. Nothing's wrong." "But there is. I can see it. What is it?" "Well, it's not bad for a birthday card." As you might guess, the conversation is headed downhill from here. "You're kidding," says the husband, grabbing the card from her hand. "No way. Unbelievable." "No, you're unbelievable." The husband blinks in the face of his wife's very real anger. He knows he's full of goodwill. He has remembered their 10th anniversary. He has bought her a present as well as a card. "Well, I made an honest mistake, okay? Give me a break." "Give you a break? An honest mistake?" "Oh, it was an honest mistake, all right, because you just don't care. You know what? If you took your car in to be detailed and they put a stripe on the side of that car that was even a fraction of an inch off, you would notice that. Why? Because you care about it. But you don't care about our anniversary. You don't care about me." The husband can't believe it. He's moving from feeling guilty to getting angry. What he thought would be a loving celebration of their 10th anniversary has become a conflict that is escalating fast. Approximately 2 minutes have passed since he handed her the card. This couple, a husband and wife, who truly love each other and both have goodwill, have come home expecting to spend a wonderful romantic evening together. Instead, they end up stomping to opposite ends of the house, staring out the windows into the darkness, wondering how it ever had come to this, and thinking, "This is crazy." This story is based on an actual incident, and I've collected many others like it from couples Sarah and I have counseled. Angry exchanges are caused when the husband appears careless, depriving his wife of love, and when the wife reacts with criticism and complaints that are contemptuous, depriving the husband of respect. And why should she be respectful? The stupid oaf doesn't deserve her respect. All you want me for is sex. Here's one more example. The husband is gone for a week on a business trip. As his plane lands, he starts envisioning a romantic sexual evening with his wife, so he hurries home as quickly as he can. As he walks in the door, his wife's first words are, "What are you doing home so early?" "Well, since you're here, I need you to pick the kids up from school, and don't forget, we have a parent-teacher meeting tonight." "Oh yes, I want to talk to you about Billy. The teacher called today and said he had been showing off and distracting his friends in class. And on the way to the school, can you do me a favor and pick up my clothes at the cleaners? Oh, and I almost forgot. Dinner will be late because my sister is dropping over for coffee." So much for the romantic evening planned by our knight of the business road, who is wound up playing second fiddle to the kids, the cleaning, and his wife's sister. On his way out the back door, he calls sarcastically over his shoulder, "Great to see you after a week." His wife is bothered by his sarcastic tone. But just as he walks out, the phone rings, and she doesn't have time to follow him outside to ask him what he meant. Later, during the parent-teacher meetings, she senses he is still angry. But on the way home, she says nothing. She is exhausted from all the week's activities, and she is upset because he's never asked her once about all she has had to deal with. She wonders what right he has to be upset with her when he is the one being unreasonable. As they retire into bed that night, the husband decides that he will make up with his wife in the most obvious and natural way. As he reaches to rub her back, which is usually a good way to get started, she groans, "Don't. I'm too tired." Angrily, he rolls away from her without saying a word. Wounded by his anger, she says, "You're so insensitive." In disbelief, he replies, "I can't believe you said that. I've been gone for a week. I come home, and instead of any kind of greeting, you just go on about the kids and your sister. And when I try to get close, you tell me you're too tired. And then you call me insensitive. You know, am I just a meal ticket to you?" By now, the wife is very hurt, and she retorts, "You never asked once how I was doing. The only time you get interested in me is for sex." I was gone a week. When we were first married and I had to travel, you couldn't wait to see me get home. You'd greet me at the door with a smile and a kiss. Now you simply look up and say, "Why are you home so early?" Thanks. That makes my day. Craziness. Just keep flipping the light switch. Stories like these are not unusual. Every married couple has versions of their own. Around and around it spins. I call it the crazy cycle. So many people are on the crazy cycle that 5 out of 10 couples in the church are divorcing, and the craziness seems to be getting worse. It's like someone coming into a room, flipping the light switch, and discovering the lights won't come on. If someone tries the switch 2 or 3 times with no results, you can understand. He will eventually figure it out. A tripped circuit breaker, a burned out bulb. But if he stands there and flips the switch constantly for half an hour, you begin to wonder, is this guy a little crazy? The point is simple. Craziness happens when we keep doing the same things over and over and over with the same ill effect. Marriage seems to be fertile ground for this kind of craziness. Why do couples communicate in code? Communication in marriage has been described, discussed, and dissected in hundreds, if not thousands, of books and articles. Why is communication between husbands and wives such a problem? It goes back to the fact that we send each other messages in code, based on gender, even though we don't intend to. What I say is not what you hear, and what you think you heard is not what I meant at all. Let's see how this plays out at home as a couple is getting dressed to start the day. She says, "I have nothing to wear." She means she has nothing new. He says, "I have nothing to wear." He means he has nothing clean. There is no serious danger of conflict here, but the nothing to wear line illustrates that we all see things out of our own needs and perceptions. They're both using the same words, but they mean something totally different. When the issue isn't the issue. In almost every case, the issue that seems to be the cause of the craziness is not the real issue at all. Do you ever get into a conflict with your spouse, but you aren't sure why? You see your spouse deflate or bristle or go cold, and then you think, what's wrong now? What in the world has happened? Typically, you write it off by saying, if only she weren't so touchy, or if only he weren't so childish. Of course, if you're the one who's offended, that's different. Your spouse is guilty of stepping on your toes again. Just because you may feel unloved or disrespected does not mean your spouse is sending that message. When the wife felt unloved because she got a birthday card for her 10th anniversary, it did not mean the husband was sending her a message saying, "I really don't care about you or love you." At the same time, when his wife reacted in an angry and disrespectful way, that did not mean her message was, "I don't respect you any farther than I can throw you." The wife needs love. She's not trying to be disrespectful. The husband needs respect. He's not trying to be unloving. Once you grasp this basic principle, that the issue is not the real issue at all, you're on your way to cracking the communication code. We're as different as pink and blue. When the issue isn't the real issue, it is crucial to understand that one thing is going on in the spirit of the wife, and an entirely different thing is going on in the spirit of the husband. The opening chapters of Genesis tell us God created them male and female, and that's hardly news. But what it underlines is that men and women are very different. For example, Peter notes that difference when he instructs husbands to treat wives in a very specific way, quote, "since she is a woman," end of quote, 1 Peter 3:7. The way I like to picture the difference between men and women is that the woman looks at the world through pink sunglasses that color all she sees. The man, however, looks at the world through blue sunglasses that color all he sees. Men and women can look at precisely the same situation and see it much differently. Inevitably, their pink and blue lenses cause their interpretation of things to be at odds to some degree. Not only do men and women see differently, but they also hear differently. To carry the pink and blue analogy a little further, God created men with blue hearing aids and women with pink hearing aids. They may hear the same words, but get much different messages, as in, "I have nothing to wear. I have nothing to wear." Because men and women have sunglasses and hearing aids in different colors, they send each other messages in different codes. When the spirit of your wife deflates before your eyes and you suddenly sense an issue, she's sending a code. Of course, if there were 1,000 women watching and listening wearing their pink sunglasses and pink hearing aids, they would quickly say, "Well, I know why that sweet thing is shutting down on him. She's so sweet and tender. I can't believe it. Look at how he's talking to her." To women, the code is obvious as they decipher the message through pink sunglasses and pink hearing aids. No wonder they often think men are so brain dead. They have two brains. One's lost and the other's out looking for it. But turn it around. When the wife sees the spirit of her husband deflate, or he gets angry and won't talk, his behavior seems childish to her. But if 1,000 men with blue sunglasses and blue hearing aids were watching and listening, they would say, "I know why that guy shut down on her. Good grief, look at the way she's talking to him. Unbelievable, get that witch up broom." Are you beginning to see why male and female communication can be such a problem? Let's go back to the story of the anniversary card that turned into "Happy Birthday." When the wife sees that her husband has purchased a birthday card, her spirit deflates in an instant. He has forgotten their anniversary many times, but this is the last straw. Obviously, her husband doesn't even love her enough to take the time to read a card he bought for her. So she sends him an angry message, and of course it was in code. Does he decode her words and expressions correctly? Of course not. He's wearing blue sunglasses. All he sees is anger, irritation, and disrespect. He feels guilty, then irritated. After all, he made an honest mistake. Give him a break. But the wife peers through her pink sunglasses, and she will have none of this honest mistake bit. She takes the conflict to a new low by assassinating his character. He thinks more of his car than he thinks of her. That does it. He is glad he bought her a birthday card. It serves her right. He doesn't have to deal with this, and he walks out. So, they both spend their 10th anniversary wondering how a little thing like a card could cause so much craziness. But of course, the card wasn't really the issue. The real issue was that the wife felt unloved and responded the only way she knew how, by getting in her husband's face and telling him off. Now, not all wives do that, but most lean in that direction at such moments. With her pink sunglasses and pink hearing aids firmly in place, she wanted him to be genuinely sorry, not defensive, but asking for forgiveness. Then they could have gone out for a nice dinner. But his blue sunglasses and blue hearing aids wouldn't let that happen. His real issue, which he probably couldn't even verbalize, is that he felt disrespected. He would show her, and so two essentially good-willed people, let me repeat, two good-willed people wound up spinning on the crazy cycle with no clue about how to slow it down or stop it. What do I mean by good-willed people? Simply that both of these people love each other a great deal. They do not mean real harm. They do not intend real evil toward one another. They are hurt and angry, but they still care deeply for one another. That is why they spent their anniversary evening in separate rooms, miserable, wondering how this whole stupid thing could have happened. And the reason neither will figure it out is that each blames the other for the whole sorry affair. Scientific research confirms the centrality of love and respect. As long as spouses do not learn to decode the pink and blue messages they are sending one another, the crazy cycle will spin and spin some more. Interestingly enough, scientific research confirms that love and respect are the foundation of a successful marriage. Dr. John Gottman, professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Washington, led a research team that spent 20 years studying 2,000 couples who had been married 20 to 40 years to the same partner. These people came from diverse backgrounds and had widely differing occupations and lifestyles. But one thing was similar: the tone of their conversations. As these couples talked together, almost always there was what Gottman calls, quote, a strong undercurrent of two basic ingredients: love and respect. These are the direct opposite of and antidote for contempt, perhaps the most coercive force in marriage, end of quote. Gottman's findings confirm what has already been in Scripture for some 2,000 years. Chapter 5 of Ephesians is considered by many to be the most significant treatise on marriage in the New Testament. Paul concludes these statements on marriage by getting gender-specific in verse 33. He reveals commands from the very heart of God as he tells the husband he must love, that is, agape love, his wife unconditionally. And the wife must respect her husband, whether or not her husband comes across as loving. Note, however, that this verse gives no command to a wife to agape love her husband. As I studied this verse over the years, I began to ask, why is there no command for a wife to agape her husband? And then it struck me, the Lord has created a woman to love. Her whole approach to nurture, her sensitivity, love, and compassion are all part of her very nature. In short, God designed the woman to love. He's not going to command her to agape her husband when he created her to do that in the first place. God is not into redundancy. Let's go a little further with this and skip over to Titus 2:4. Here, older women are told to encourage younger women to love their husbands and children. But in this case, Paul is not talking about agape love. In Titus 2:4, he uses the Greek word phileo, which refers to the human, brotherly kind of love. The point is, a young wife is created to agape her husband and children. Ultimately, she will never stop unconditionally loving them. But in the daily wear and tear of life, she is in danger of becoming discouraged, so discouraged that she may lack phileo. A kind of impatient unfriendliness can come over her. She may scold and sigh way too much. After all, there is always something or someone who needs correcting. She cares deeply. Her motives are filled with agape, but her methods lack phileo. Not every woman has this problem, but I've counseled many who admit they do have their periods of negativity concerning husbands or the children. Sometimes this is known as PMS. I call it pre-murder syndrome. Everyone ducks for cover when mom is in this kind of mood. No one doubts her basic mother love, but sometimes they're not so sure she really likes them. Part of the problem, however, is that women are not at all sure they are being loved, especially by their husbands. The question continues to come up, does he love me as much as I love him? It sure doesn't seem like it. When he acts or reacts in ways that seem unloving to her, she reacts in ways that feel disrespectful to him. Who started it? Yes. You're stepping on my air hose. The more I meditated on these two passages of Scripture, the more I realized that if a husband is commanded to agape love his wife, then she truly needs love. In fact, she needs love like she needs air to breathe. Picture, if you would, the wife having an air hose that goes to a love tank. When her husband bounds in and starts prancing around like a 10-point buck looking for some place to graze, he steps on her air hose. This does not make her a happy camper. In fact, if she can find a baseball bat or some other weapon, she might just whack the big buck and tell him, "Get off my air hose, I can't breathe." Simply put, when her deepest need is being stepped on, you can expect her to react negatively. In counseling, I tell the husband that when he sees the spirit of his wife deflate, he is stepping on her air hose. She's not getting the air she needs to breathe. She is crying out, "I feel unloved by you right now. I can't believe how unloving this feels. I can't believe you're doing this to me." Not only is the husband commanded to love his wife, but the wife is commanded to respect her husband. You see, the husband needs respect just as he needs air to breathe. He also has an air hose that runs over to a big tank labeled respect. And as long as the air is coming through, he is just fine. To keep the deer analogy going, suppose the wife, a lovely doe, starts tromping on his air hose with her sharp little hoofs. As we've seen in a story like the 10th anniversary birthday card, the wife may have had good reason to prance all over her husband's air hose. But what's going to happen? As his air hose starts to leak because of all the little cuts her hoofs have made in it, the husband is also going to react because his deepest need for respect is not being met, and the battle is on. Husbands and wives keep spinning on the crazy cycle because they don't understand that what seems to be the issue isn't the issue at all. The real issues are always love and respect. Everything else is just filling in the details. Men hear criticism as contempt. Women feel silence as hostility. Let me emphasize to wives that when men hear negative criticism, it doesn't take them long to start interpreting that as contempt for who they are as men. Remember, the man is wearing blue hearing aids. When his wife sends out those pink but very pointed messages and his air hose starts to leak, he soon says to himself, "I don't deserve this kind of talk. Everybody respects me except you. You're just picking a fight. I wish you would just be quiet." When a husband can take it no longer, he gets up and walks out without a word. And that is the coup de grace. He might as well have screamed at the top of his lungs, "I don't love you, woman!" The wife is dazed. First, she has been treated unlovingly. Second, she has tried to move toward her husband by doing the loving thing, "We need to talk." And now he has shown her he is the most hostile, unloving human being on the planet by just walking away and leaving her there. That does it. She is not far from thinking she has all kinds of grounds for divorce. But if she stops to think, she'll realize that she started the whole thing with her criticism. Often both spouses have goodwill but are not deciphering each other's code. She criticizes out of love, but he hears only disrespect. He distances himself to prevent things from escalating, which is the honorable thing to do. But she sees only his failure to be loving. This attitude of men goes a lot deeper than the fact that they might be immature or proud. Men have an honor code. When a wife comes at a husband who has basic goodwill, he doesn't want to fight verbally or physically. As his wife rails on him or criticizes, he sits there quietly, which makes her angrier than ever. Because her frontal attack isn't working, she soon sees him as cold and uncaring. Meanwhile, he's thinking, "I can't believe this. My wife is treating me with disrespect. In fact, it's really contempt. All she can say is that I'm unloving." The crazy cycle continues to spin. As she gets louder, he gets quieter. Soon she may be screaming at him with venomous words that he's never heard in all of his life. As a rule, women have learned to fight with words. They are masters of the art. And husbands can feel helpless before the onslaught. I want to underline that this happens all the time with couples who actually have good intentions, and maybe more so because they feel freer to let down their guard and express what upsets them. Most husbands and wives who are on the crazy cycle have basic goodwill toward one another, but they just don't know how to express it. And so the crazy cycle eventually spins, many of them right into separation and divorce. I've had couples fighting with one another in my office, and I've said, time out, time out. Sir, let me ask you something. Does your wife have basic goodwill toward you and others? Would you entrust the children to her? Oh, absolutely. Ma'am, does he have basic goodwill toward you and others, and would you entrust the children to him? Of course. Then what is going on with you two? How can two good-willed people treat one another this way? The husband and wife will look at me as if to ask, "Why don't you tell us? All we know is we fight and fight and fight, and usually we really don't know why." As I've tried to explain to many couples over the years, a major part of the answer is learning how to decode each other's message. Whenever a wife is complaining, criticizing, or crying, she is sending her encoded message, "I want your love." And whenever a husband is speaking harshly or sometimes not speaking at all, he is sending his encoded message, "I want your respect." We've begun to see how this decoding can start to happen. But there are still problems that stand in the way. Men, for the most part, are masters at stonewalling their wives who confront them because they feel unloved. And many women are so fed up with husbands who don't seem to want to love them that the last thing they want to grant is respect. These women say the husband has to earn her respect before she will grant it. But of course, if she continues to disrespectfully hammer at him, especially when he is trying to do the honorable thing, nothing much will happen. We'll look at how all this plays out and how husbands and wives can deal with these problems next.
What?
What a bunch of hooey.
All right, so we've learned a few things. And it's not fun. Now, we've learned a few things, and so our homework assignment is to attempt to try to decode others' messages and start learning how to do that. probably at this point just recognizing it, not
We're just jealous because we can't do that.
start being able to recognize that there is something being expressed, a lack of respect or a lack of love. And you'll notice that in lots of other relationships other than marriage relationships. So you can kind of see that in social settings.
You need to look for that in yourself, right?
Yeah, when the person is giving you the message. When you see someone give you the message, like one of the areas that happens, and in fact, John Gray has a book on work relationships and how you see it in the workplace, how this all interacts and how there's misunderstandings. And I think that in a lot of ways, it relates to women feeling like they're being sexually harassed and men feeling that they're not being respected or that they're being mistreated in work relationships. You know, if you have a boss that's a man and a woman who works under him, that's a relationship that can also have these kinds of issues as well. The man still wants respect. Now, in a business setting, the woman is more likely to give him respect because that's her role as a worker, as an employee, as someone who's working under someone else. So it'll be more likely to be respectful. But the man who will not be loving, remember this is agape love, so it relates to all people, not just spouses, that agape love that the man fails to do will bring about a disrespect from the woman. I mean, that's a natural reaction to withhold what the other person wants when we feel hurt. And so when a man isn't respected or feels that he's not being respected, then he's going to withhold loving actions. And remember, love is action, right? And when the woman doesn't feel appreciated, all the way up to loved, cherished, then she will withhold respect. It's the evil nature that we have. The sinful nature functions in these kind of circumstances with a guilt-blame teeter-totter. If I am guilty of something, I want to seek to cast that weight over to the blame side. Blame the other person. Make them be at fault rather than me. Right? So that's another way you can recognize it. When you see that you're starting to blame the other person, well, it's all her fault. Well, it's all his fault. When you start to see that, then recognize that you are receiving a message of guilt, and so that you can analyze the situation. Am I showing respect or am I showing love in what I'm doing? Okay? And here we get into being a hearer or a doer. And so we have to make the commitment to really try to do this in our relationships between the sexes. That's why it's called the battle of the sexes, because there's a lot of the conflict and very little of the understanding. So we'll have to see if we can make this happen in our lives. Let's close with a word of prayer, and then we'll go into our time of petition and supplication. Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to study these things. We thank you for the insight that you've given to Emerson Eggerichs and these other authors that we've looked at, so that we might be able to better understand each other and better understand what it means to agape and what it means to respect, so that we might be able to see them, so that we might offer to each other the respect and love that we want to give to each other, so that other people will see that there's a difference in us, and we will represent the relationship of Christ in the church to those around us in our marriage and in just our activities and our reactions, our responses to those in other settings as well. We thank you for it in Jesus' name.